The cowboy named Daniel had lived most of his life believing that some dreams were not meant for him. He was 35, strong from years of ranch work, calm in nature, and respected by everyone around town, but he carried a heaviness inside him that no one could see. Years ago, a doctor had told him something that changed the way he looked at his future. The doctor said he might never have children. Daniel remembered the silence in that small clinic, the smell of old paper, and the doctor's careful voice trying to soften the truth. But nothing made it easier. That day, a door inside him quietly closed, and ever since, he kept himself away from the idea of marriage, fearing he would disappoint any woman who chose him. But life had its own plans. Months ago, after a long and unexpected chain of events, he had married a woman unlike anyone he had ever met. Her name was Alara. She was tall, almost a head taller than him, strong yet gentle, with a voice that carried calmness even in moments of trouble. People in town jokingly called her the giant bride, not out of insult, but out of amazement. She was built like a shield against the world, broad-shouldered, powerful, and with a presence that made people step back when she walked by. But Daniel, who spent most of his life around cattle and storms, never felt fear near her. Instead, he felt a strange kind of peace. Alara had come from a distant mountain community, a place where people lived quietly away from towns and noise. Her family arranged her marriage with Daniel after meeting him during a cattle trade. They believed he was kind, steady, and dependable qualities they valued deeply. Daniel had agreed mostly out of respect, and partly because something about Alara made him feel safe. Almost understood without words. Their marriage, however, was still young. They were learning each other's habits, rhythms, fears, and dreams. Daniel tried to be everything a husband should be: responsible, warm, patient. But there was one thing he never found the courage to tell her the truth about why he believed he would never become a father. Tonight, the wind outside was softer than usual. The lantern in their cabin glowed with a warm, golden light that made the wood walls look alive. Daniel had just returned from the ranch fields, dust on his boots and tiredness in his eyes. Alara stood near the small fireplace, stirring a pot of stew. Her long hair fell over one shoulder, and her hands moved with surprising gentleness for someone so strong. "Long day?" she asked, without turning around. He nodded, though she didn't see him. The cattle were restless. "Maybe a storm is coming. We'll be ready," she said, with a smile in her voice. Daniel removed his hat, rubbed the back of his neck, and took a slow breath. Being near her always made him aware of the weight he carried. She deserved the truth. Every time he tried, the words froze. After dinner, the night settled gently around their cabin. The moonlight entered through the window, making the room look almost silver. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped together. Alara finished cleaning up and walked toward him. When she stood beside him, he felt her presence like a warm blanket. She sat next to him, and the bed dipped slightly under her weight. She looked at him for a long moment, studying his face. "You're quiet again," she said softly. "Something is always on your mind at night. Do you ever want to tell me?" Daniel swallowed hard, wishing he could, but fear made his voice weak. "It's nothing." She tilted her head, not convinced. Alara had always been able to read silence better than words. Then, in a gentle voice, she said the sentence that made his breath stop. "Let's try again tonight." Daniel froze. The words hit him like cold water. His heart jumped, his hands tightened, and suddenly the room felt too small. She said it lightly with hope in her eyes, but she had no idea what those words did to him. He shook his head quickly, almost in panic. "Alara." I don't think she placed a hand on his arm, a warm, steady touch that grounded him. "I know you're nervous," she whispered, "but I'm your wife. We don't have to rush anything. We can move slowly. We learn together." He looked at her, and guilt filled his chest. She thought he was shy. She thought he lacked confidence. She thought his hesitation was normal for a newly married man. She did not know the truth that he feared he could never give her the family she might one day want. "Alara," he said softly, trying again, "there's something you don't know." She waited patiently, her eyes soft and full of trust. Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to say everything. But the shame he carried for years rose like a wall inside him. Before he could speak, she surprised him again. "Daniel," she said, "I chose you because of your heart, not for something your body may or may not do." His eyes widened. Felt like she had read the secret he never said aloud. But she gently shook her head. "You carry a fear," she continued. "I don't know what it is, but I can feel it. Every night, you sit here with the same look. You hold your breath like you're afraid of hurting me with words." Her smile was soft and reassuring. "You could never hurt me." Daniel lowered his gaze, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to disappoint you." "You won't," she said instantly. "But what if I do?" he asked. The question escaping before he could stop it, Ilara reached out and lifted his chin with her fingers so he would look at her. Daniel hope doesn't come from perfection. It comes from trying together. He felt his chest ache at her words. Nobody had ever spoken to him like that, not with expectation, but with acceptance. She continued. "Back home, some families struggled to have children. Some waited for years. Some used medicines. Some prayed. Some cried. But none of them were alone. Everyone helped each other. Everyone believed there was more than one way for a family to grow." Daniel listened, almost unable to breathe. He had spent years thinking he was alone in this problem. He had convinced himself that no one could understand. But Ilara, with her calm eyes and steady voice, was showing him something he never considered, that his fear didn't have to isolate him. She added softly, "And even if one way doesn't work, there are other ways. Many ways a family can begin in more than one form." He swallowed, and tears stung his eyes, something he hadn't felt in a long time. "You mean you're not expecting anything from me?" "I expect honesty," she whispered. "I expect us to face things together. That's all." Daniel exhaled slowly, his shoulders always tense at night, finally lowered. For the first time since their marriage, he felt like he wasn't failing her. She wasn't asking for miracles. She wasn't asking for promises he couldn't give. She was offering something much bigger hope. Ilara leaned closer, her forehead resting gently against his. "If you ever want to try again," she murmured, "then we try. If you need time, we wait. If we need help, we seek it." Daniel closed his eyes. Her words felt like a warm light spreading through a room that had been dark for years. He didn't know what the future held, and he still feared the uncertainty. But sitting there with her, he felt something change inside him. Not a solution, not a cure, but a small door opening, one he thought was locked forever. When he finally spoke, his voice was steadier than before. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I know," she whispered. "And I'm here." The night grew quiet around them. The wind outside softened. The lantern light flickered gently on the wall. Daniel wasn't ready to try again yet, but he felt something new. He felt safe enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, hope wasn't impossible. And Ilara, with her gentle strength, held his hand as if she already knew that the journey ahead would change both of their lives in ways they never expected. The next morning came with a soft light spreading across the fields. A gentle fog rested over the grass, making everything look quiet and peaceful. Daniel woke slowly, feeling strangely lighter than the night before. The heaviness that usually sat in his chest was still there, but not as sharp, not as painful. He blinked a few times and turned his head. Ilara was already awake, sitting near the window with a cup of warm tea in her hands. Her tall form was calm, and the early sunlight touched her face, making her look almost carved out of gold. She noticed him stirring and smiled. "Good morning." Daniel sat up and rubbed his eyes. Morning. There was no awkwardness between them, no tension from the night before. Instead, there was a gentle understanding, like two people who had silently made a promise they both respected. Ilara did not pressure him. She didn't mention her words from last night. She simply existed beside him with the same calm presence she always had. Daniel watched her quietly for a moment. He still didn't know how to express everything he felt: fear, hope, gratitude, but he knew one thing for sure. He didn't want to hide anymore. Maybe he couldn't say the whole truth yet, but he wanted to move forward. Even if slowly. "I'll take the cattle out early today," he said. Ilara nodded. I'll help with the water barrels before I start cooking. They shared a simple breakfast, and for the first time, Daniel felt like he wasn't pretending. He wasn't acting like a man who had everything under control. He wasn't trying to hide behind silence. He was just himself, and she accepted that. After breakfast, Daniel stepped outside. The cold morning air hit his skin, waking him fully. His horse, Bristle, lifted its head, ears twitching as if sensing his mood. Daniel ran a hand through the horse's mane and whispered, "Feels different today, boy." On the other side of the yard, Ilara carried 2 large water barrels as if they were nothing. Daniel watched her for a moment. He admired her strength, but even more, he admired the calm way she used it. When their eyes met, she gave him a soft smile, the kind that told him she understood everything without needing words. He saddled his horse and rode out, trying to steady his mind. The day stretched ahead with work, checking fences, moving cattle, repairing a broken gate. But through it all, his thoughts kept returning to her. To the way she spoke to him last night, and how she didn't demand anything. It made something inside him loosen, like a knot slowly untangling. By midday, clouds gathered in the sky. The air smelled like rain. Daniel guided the cattle toward safer ground before the storm arrived. As thunder rolled in the distance, he hurried back home. The wind picked up, brushing dust across the yard. Ilara was outside gathering firewood. She looked up as he approached. "Storm's coming fast. You should stay inside," Daniel said. Together, they stacked the firewood safely and secured the doors. When the first drops of rain fell, they slipped inside the cabin. The storm began quickly, raindrops tapping hard against the roof, the wind whistling like a restless ghost. Ilara lit a lantern while Daniel removed his wet jacket. The cabin felt small but warm, especially when the fire in the hearth began to crackle. Thunder rumbled, and for a moment they listened in silence. After a while, Ilara spoke gently. "You've been thinking a lot since last night," he nodded, looking down at his hands. "Yes. If you want to tell me something," she said softly, "you can. And if you're not ready, that's all right." Daniel sat at the table, trying to find the courage that always seemed to slip away at the last moment. The storm outside felt like a reflection of his mind, loud, restless, full of things unspoken. Ilara sat across from him, her hands folded patiently. She didn't rush him, didn't push him, didn't even lean forward. She simply waited, like someone who believed that trust could not be forced, only nurtured. Finally, Daniel took a slow breath. "Ilara, years ago, before you came here, before we met, I went to a doctor." His voice trembled slightly. "He told me something. Something painful. I thought it would never matter because I planned to stay alone. But then you came into my life, and I didn't know how to tell you." Ilara's eyes softened. "You don't have to say everything at once." "I should," Daniel whispered. "You're my wife. You deserve honesty." She stayed quiet, giving him space. He swallowed, feeling the old shame rise again, but he pushed through it this time. "The doctor said I might not be able to have children." The room fell silent, except for the rain hitting the roof. Ilara didn't react with shock or sadness. She simply breathed slowly, processing his words with calm acceptance. Daniel looked away. "I didn't want to make you hope for something I can't give." Lara reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Her touch was warm and steady. "Thank you for trusting me," she said softly. He blinked, almost surprised. "You're not upset?" She shook her head. "No. Why would I be angry at something that isn't your fault? I thought, maybe you wouldn't want a life with someone like me." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Daniel, I didn't marry you because of what might happen in the future. I married you because of the man you are now." His throat tightened. He had waited years for someone to speak to him like that. Lorraine continued, her thumb brushing lightly over his hand. "And you're forgetting something important." "What?" he asked, confused. "Doctors can be wrong. Life can surprise us. People who were told they couldn't have children sometimes found hope in places they never expected." Daniel looked at her, a mix of disbelief and longing. "You really think there's still a chance?" She nodded slowly. "Maybe. Or maybe we will find another path. but we will face it together." Her words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. She squeezed his hand. "Last night, when I said let's try again tonight, I didn't mean it as pressure. I meant it as hope. And hope is something we build slowly, not something we chase with fear." Daniel felt the weight inside him shifting, becoming lighter. "Alara, I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," she replied. "Just stay with me. Let us walk this path one step at a time." The storm outside began to soften, the rain calming to a gentle rhythm. Daniel breathed more easily than he had in years. Sharing his secret didn't break anything, it built something new between them: trust, understanding, a deeper bond than before. Later, when the storm passed and the sky turned quiet, they sat by the fire together. Daniel rested his head against the back of the chair, and Alara leaned beside him. Her large hand wrapped around his gently, not squeezing tightly, resting there with quiet reassurance. Daniel felt safe in that moment, safe enough to imagine a future he never allowed himself to picture a future with her. With laughter, with warmth, with strength that wasn't only physical but emotional too. Time passed in soft silence. The fire crackled, and the night grew deeper. Daniel felt sleepy, but he didn't want the moment to end. "Alara," he said quietly. "Yes." She answered, "Thank you for giving me hope." She looked at him with eyes full of gentle warmth. "Hope is something we give each other," he nodded. And for the first time in many years, he let himself believe that maybe miracles weren't always loud or sudden. Sometimes they were gentle. Sometimes they came in the form of a woman who sat beside him during a storm. Holding his hand without letting go, the night grew quiet, and Daniel closed his eyes, feeling her presence like a protective wall around him. Hope, once a distant dream now, felt close enough to touch. The next morning brought a calmness that felt almost unreal to Daniel. The storm had passed completely, leaving the sky clear and bright. The sunlight spread across the ranch, touching every corner of the land with a warm glow. Birds were singing again, and the cattle moved peacefully across the field. As if the world had decided to give the couple a fresh start, Daniel stepped outside the cabin early. Wanting a moment to himself before the day began, the air smelled of wet earth and new beginnings. He breathed deeply, letting the cool breeze settle inside him. For the first time in a long while, he didn't wake up with fear twisting in his stomach. Instead, he woke up with something softer — hope. Inside the cabin, Alara moved around quietly. She was always up before him, preparing breakfast or checking the fire. Her tall figure moved with a grace that didn't match her size. Daniel found himself watching her from the doorway. She sensed his gaze and turned, smiling gently. "You slept better," she said. Daniel nodded slowly. "Because of you." She placed warm bread on the table. "We face things together. That's how it should be." They ate breakfast without rushing. The peaceful silence between them felt like a gift. Daniel glanced at her several times, noticing small details he had never really focused on before. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear. The way she hummed softly while eating. The way she seemed to read every emotion he carried without needing to ask. After breakfast, Alara stepped outside to help with the animals. Daniel watched her lift heavy feed bags with ease. She wasn't just strong in body, she was strong in the places where he had been weak for years. Her strength didn't overpower him. It sheltered him, encouraged him, and made him feel like he didn't have to carry everything alone. He joined her in the yard. "I'll fix the gate today. It broke during the storm." "I'll help," she replied. He smiled, a little shy. "You always help. That's what partners do." Working together made the time pass quickly. Daniel repaired the broken fence while Alara held the posts in place. They fit together like two hands joining different shapes, different strengths, but moving with the same purpose. It felt natural, almost easy. Around midday, the sun warmed the earth, and Daniel wiped sweat from his forehead. Alara handed him a cup of cool water. Their hands touched slightly, and something quiet and warm passed between them. He felt his heartbeat shift, not with panic this time, but with a gentle appreciation. "You know," she said softly, "you look lighter today, do I?" He asked. She nodded. Fear takes space. When you shared your truth, some of it left you. Daniel swallowed, realizing she was right. I still worry. That's normal. But now we worry together. He looked down at the ground for a moment, feeling the truth of her words. Then he lifted his eyes, meeting her calm, steady gaze. Ilara. I want to try, he said slowly. She tilted her head. Try what? Not just what you said last night. I want to try hope. I want to try believing that I'm not broken, that our future is not limited because of me. Her expression softened even more, and she stepped closer. Daniel felt her presence surround him like warm air. You aren't broken, she whispered. You never were. Her words lingered in the quiet moment between them, filling Daniel with a calmness he didn't know he needed. They continued working until the sun dipped slightly. When they returned to the cabin, Daniel felt a shift inside him, like the ground he stood on was finally steady. Later that afternoon, a wagon approached the ranch. Dust rose behind it as it rolled toward the house. Daniel recognized the man driving it, Dr. Harrow, the old town doctor who visited ranchers for yearly checkups or emergencies. Morning, Daniel. The doctor called out as he pulled the wagon to a stop. Daniel felt a mix of surprise and confusion. Didn't expect to see you today? Storm knocked down half the valley's fences, Dr. Harrow said with a sigh. Heading around to check if anyone's hurt? Wanted to stop and see how you two are doing. Ilara stepped outside, greeting the doctor with polite calmness. Dr. Harrow looked up at her, a bit amazed by her height as always, but respectful. Good to see you. Mrs. Daniel, he said kindly. Ilara nodded. Thank you for checking on us. The doctor climbed down and pulled out a few small medicine bottles. Just routine supplies. Storm weather often makes people sick. Daniel accepted them. Thank you. Dr. Harrow studied Daniel a moment. You look different today. Happier.
Oh.
Daniel wasn't used to people noticing his emotions. He rubbed the back of his neck. Just, had a good morning, I guess? Lara glanced at him, small but warm smile touching her lips. The doctor continued talking for a few minutes before stepping back into his wagon. Before leaving, he looked at Daniel again. You know, son, sometimes a man believes something about himself for too long. And sometimes, life proves him wrong when he least expects it. The words hit Daniel deeper than he wanted to admit. Did the doctor say that because he suspected something? Or was it coincidence? The wagon rolled away, leaving Daniel standing quietly in the dust. Ilara stepped beside him. You're thinking too much again? She said softly. Maybe he admitted, but what he said. It made me think. Ilara gently placed a hand on his back. Hope can come from many directions. They walked back inside the cabin. As evening approached, a golden glow filled the room. Daniel washed his hands, splashing cool water on his face, trying to settle the mix of emotions rising inside him. After dinner, I sat by the window, watching the sky turn from gold to purple. Ilara joined him, sitting close enough that their shoulders brushed lightly. She didn't speak at first. She simply sat near him, letting the evening settle around them. Finally, she spoke softly. Daniel, do you know what I wish for? He shook his head gently. What? I wish for peace in your heart. His breath caught slightly. Why that? Because when your heart is peaceful, everything else becomes easier. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. You make me think there's still a chance, even when I don't believe it myself. Ilara turned her face toward him. There is always a chance. Maybe not the way we expect. But hope has many paths. He looked into her eyes, seeing something he hadn't noticed before. She wasn't just strong. She was a woman who believed in him even when he couldn't believe in himself. Her trust in him wasn't blind, it was chosen, patient, and steady. Ilara, he said, his voice gentle but honest. Last night scared me. Not because of what you said, but because I thought I would disappoint you. You didn't, she whispered. Maybe not yet, he replied. But I want to be the man you need. I want to give you everything a husband should. She placed her hand over his. You already do. His breath trembled slightly. I don't want fear to shape our marriage. It won't, she said firmly. Not anymore. Silence followed, but it wasn't heavy. It was warm, like standing close to a fire on a cold night. Daniel took a slow breath. I want to try. Really try. For us. For our future. Lara's eyes softened. Then we move forward. Together. He nodded. And this time, it wasn't fear guiding him. It was something gentler, something steadier. The night deepened. The wind outside whispered softly through the trees. Daniel felt a warmth inside him unlike anything he had felt in years. The uncertainty was still there, yes, but it no longer controlled him. For the first time. He believed that his future wasn't a closed door. He believed that hope soft, patient, and unexpected was finally within reach. The next days passed quietly. But something had changed between Daniel and Alara. It wasn't loud or sudden, but gentle like the slow warming of the earth before spring. They woke up each morning with a little more ease, worked side by side with a little more comfort, and spoke with a kind of honesty that felt new. Even to Daniel, he found himself thinking often about the future, not with fear, but with curiosity. He no longer saw it as a path closing in front of him, but as a road stretching forward. One he could walk with her without shame or worry. One evening, after a long day fixing the barn roof, Daniel sat outside on the porch. The sky was bright with stars, scattered like silver dust across the dark night. He leaned back in his chair, letting the cool breeze brush against his skin. Behind him, the cabin glowed softly with lantern light. Alara stepped outside, carrying 2 warm cups of tea. She handed one to Daniel and then sat beside him. Her tall frame looked peaceful in the dim light, and her presence brought him a comfort he didn't know he needed. "It's a quiet night," she said gently. "Feels like the world's resting." Daniel replied. They sipped their tea in silence for a moment. Daniel kept glancing at her, thinking about how everything had changed since she entered his life. He used to believe he was meant to walk through life alone. But sitting beside her now, he realized how wrong he had been. Alara noticed his distracted expression. "Something on your mind?" "Yes," he admitted softly. "But it's a good something." She waited, allowing him time to find the right words. "Since the storm began, I've been thinking about what you said. About hope. About having more than one way to build a family." Alara turned slightly toward him, her warm eyes encouraging him to continue. He took a slow breath. "I always thought, if I couldn't be a father in the usual way, then I shouldn't have a family at all. I thought I wasn't enough." Her expression softened with a deep sadness, not for herself, but for him, for the years he carried such a heavy burden alone. "But now," Daniel continued, "I'm starting to believe something different. Maybe it doesn't matter how a family begins. Maybe it only matters who we walk with." Lara's voice was barely above a whisper. "Daniel, you are enough. You always were." Her words touched him deeply. He swallowed, feeling emotion rise unexpectedly. He didn't cry often, in fact. Couldn't remember the last time, but now he fought to steady his voice. "Alara," he said, "I want a future with you. Whatever shape it takes. Whatever form it becomes. I want to face every step with you." She reached out and took his hand in her large, warm grip. "Then we will." They stayed on the porch until the tea cooled and the stars dimmed slightly. For Daniel, the quiet night settled into something firm inside his heart, a decision, a resolve, a new beginning. The next morning, Daniel woke early, almost before the sun. He stepped outside and fed the cattle, humming softly. He didn't even realize he was humming until Alara walked out. Surprised. "You're in a good mood today," she said. Daniel smiled. "Feels like a new start." Later that afternoon, while they were repairing a broken wagon wheel, Alara paused and looked at him with curiosity. "Daniel, may I ask something?" "Of course." She hesitated only a moment. "Back home, when my father chose our marriage, I wondered if you would ever want children. Not because I needed them to feel complete, but because I hoped to build a life full of love and warmth, a home where people feel safe." Daniel listened quietly. She continued, "I worried that maybe you would never want that." Daniel set down the wooden plank he was holding. "I wanted it. I always wanted it. I just never believed I deserved it." Lara touched his arm gently. "Everyone deserves a home filled with love." Her words sat in his chest like sunlight. He let out a long breath, realizing he was ready for something he had feared for so long. Alara, he said slowly, if one path doesn't work for us, maybe we should look for another. She tilted her head, her eyes warming. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Daniel nodded. I want us to build a family. However life allows us to. Alara didn't smile at first. Instead, she blinked, overwhelmed. Then her expression softened into something pure and full of joy. Thank you, she whispered. That means more to me than you know. In the days that followed, Daniel felt lighter. He found himself dreaming again, not wild dreams, but small ones. He imagined a child running through the yard, laughing beside the cattle. He imagined a small hand in his big one. He imagined Alara's gentle voice calling both of them inside for dinner. He didn't know if it would ever happen, but now he believed the door wasn't fully closed. And even if it was, there were windows, there were new paths, there were places they could walk together without fear. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Daniel returned early from the field. Alara was in the yard feeding the chickens. He approached her with a steady, calm expression. Alara, he said. Yes? She asked, wiping her hands. He took both her hands in his. I'm ready, she blinked. Ready for what? Ready to try again? Not because I'm afraid, not because I feel pressured, but because I want to, because I believe in us now. For a moment, Alara just stared, her large eyes shining with gentle surprise. Then she smiled, not a big, excited smile, but a soft, meaningful one, filled with gratitude and warmth. You're sure? She whispered. Yes, he said. I'm sure. She squeezed his hands gently. Then we moved forward, together. That night, the cabin was warm, peaceful, and full of quiet understanding. There was no fear between them, no pressure, no expectation. Only trust, only patience, only two hearts moving closer in a way that felt natural and right. Later, as they rested beside each other, Daniel spoke again. Alara, thank you for never giving up on me. She brushed his hair gently. Hope grows when two people hold it together. They lay in comfortable silence, feeling the closeness that had grown from honesty, not fear. Daniel didn't know what the future held. Neither did Alara, but they knew one thing for certain. They would face it side by side. Without shame, without hiding, without letting old fears lead their steps. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. Alara began waking up tired. She napped in the afternoon, something she never used to do. She ate more than usual and sometimes placed a hand on her stomach without noticing. Daniel watched her quietly, unsure what it meant. He didn't want to assume. He didn't want to hope too loudly. But something in her eyes, something in her body, something in the air around their home, felt different. One morning, Daniel woke before sunrise. Alara was already sitting up in bed, her hand resting gently on her stomach. She looked at him, her eyes soft and full of emotion. Daniel, she whispered. Yes, he asked gently. Her voice trembled with quiet joy. I think there is a new life inside me. Daniel froze, not in fear, not in worry, but in shock, pure and overwhelming. For a long moment, he didn't breathe. Then his chest tightened, his eyes stung, and he felt a warmth spread through him like sunlight. Finally breaking through clouds that had covered him for years, Alara reached for his hand. I didn't want to tell you until I felt certain. But I feel different. I feel life. Daniel covered her hand with both of his, trembling slightly. Are you sure? She nodded. I am, he swallowed, unable to speak for several seconds. Then, in a voice filled with emotion he could no longer hide, he whispered, You gave me hope. And now, life gave it back to us. Alara leaned toward him. Resting her forehead against his, We face everything together, she whispered. Daniel closed his eyes, letting the truth settle inside him. For the first time in his life, hope didn't feel like a distant dream. It felt real. It felt warm. It felt alive.